page 12P of the contract. It says any disciplinary action must be imposed and received by the officer within 100 calendar days. The police department shall not engage in a criminal investigation for the purpose of bypassing the 100-day calendar time limitation. An extension of the time period may be granted if mutually agreed upon by the labor relations director and the union.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering who asked for the extension of, because I've tried to do this before and I was getting rolling, and I don't know, he knew Patrick Telly.
Okay.
And they served on the union board together, so when I filed the complaint against Telly, all I got was lied to for like 2 years, you know. So, but I'm just wondering who asked for the extension of time.
Who can ask, or in your case, who did ask? That's what I'm trying to... maybe I'm not understanding what you're asking. Because there can be, on any particular investigation, there can be a request to extend the timeline. But are you asking, did anybody, or are you asking...
Yeah, I'm asking, did anybody, or who is supposed to ask for the extension? Is it the citizen or the officer?
I mean, if you have, I'll call him Officer A, just for the sake of an example here. If you have Officer A that's complained upon, say you file a complaint on Officer A, and Internal Affairs is the party that looks into the allegations against Officer A. You know, you've been through the process, you understand they get your statement, they get witnesses, all that stuff. Internal Affairs has to have that case concluded within 100 calendar days from whatever date that the incident occurred. So if it's January 1st, you got 100 days down the road, so sometime in March. If they're going to go past that 100 days, which happens, because sometimes we as internal don't get the case on day one. Oftentimes we'll get notified of it on day 90, or even sometimes day 190. We still do the investigation. Nothing changes in how it gets done. The only thing that changes on the back end
is the discipline.
The discipline. The officer cannot receive, per the contract, cannot receive formal, such as a reprimand or a suspension, discipline per the contract. They still get, I'll call, found, sustained, or, if in fact they did something wrong, they'll get found, but the chief is limited in what he can do as far as disciplinary measures per the contract.
When the extension is so it can be the citizen or the officer, or...
I've never seen it where think of it from a common sense approach. The officer never wants to extend it.
So...
Because it's just in the offshoot that there's something wrong, it gives more of an opportunity. I can tell you, I've worked with the union. I've been on both sides of it. I've worked as a rep from the side of the officer where you come up and you're their advocate, if you will, and then I've worked at it from this side where I'm, I guess, the prosecuting agency, if you'll look at it that way. Very, 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 very rarely, if ever, is there an extension granted by the union on an internal affairs investigation. We have line investigations, which are lower grade things, such as maybe an officer was driving too fast in their cruiser, something that could be handled by their supervisor and doesn't rise to the level of coming to internal. Oftentimes, those will be granted extensions, but they don't operate under the 100-day rule. They operate under something completely different. They only have 3 working days to complete those because they're much lower grade.
So it's up to the citizen to ask.
No.
Or that would be the officer.
It always comes from, typically it comes from the internal affairs unit, knowing that they're not going to be done with this.
30 days for I was waiting for court transcripts.
In that matter of time?
Yeah, because my problem is I was waiting for, it took me, so I told him that, it took 30 days for my appeal, and then when I got the appeal, it took like maybe another month for my lawyer to get the transcripts, for them to be printed, and then it took, I don't know how many times I got run back and forth, but the court would say that my lawyer could give them to me. Then I'd call my lawyer, who wanted to wait for her boss, who was going to tell me if she could give them to me. And then she says I got to go to Lincoln. Then when I called Lincoln, they said the court could give it to me. You know what I mean? So it was kind of a long process.
What's the bureaucracy?
Yeah, of getting them. And I was telling Pruz that I was close to getting them. I just needed to get to Lincoln, and I was going to meet with him on a particular time, the 7th of May, and he had closed the case on April 22nd, and I didn't know the case was closed.
Who was the case against? Which officer was the complaint against?
Well,
I'm gonna look something up as I'm talking to you. So
yeah, because when he's investigating Wells, I'm trying to give him tapes of David Smallheiser, who is the city prosecutor.
do you remember the case number on this one?
This one was CC 2014-0011.
Okay, that's the one we're referring to. Let me click on that here. I've got some stuff at on my desktop here that I'm looking at.
And then so I'm trying to get him the tapes, and I was going to give them to him when I met with him, and then I was going to, which David Smallheiser was talking about John Wells mistakenly telling the prosecutor I was harassing him. And no, he just implied it, is what she said. And then I have the court transcripts in which he said that it was my frivolous citizen complaint for lying to a prosecutor that was the harassment. You know, which is, how can I file a complaint for something that hasn't even been repeated yet? You know, he told the prosecutor I was lying. I asked about it. You know, when he accused me, I hadn't filed my complaint yet. You know what I mean? So he's given different stories, and I believe he lied in court and then lied to the prosecutor. And, you know, I have the transcripts of it. I was wanting him to wait. I told him I didn't care about the 100 days, that I cared more about it because I cared more about that it happened to me. And
so let me connect the dots here to see if I'm catching what you're throwing at me here. I think what you said was Sergeant Pruz was trying to honor the 100-day guideline. You were trying to get him transcripts, but because of a variety of things.
No, he would tell me that he couldn't, like, I couldn't get the transcripts right away, but he could have gone to the courthouse and read them. And he was telling me that he couldn't because the court wouldn't let him, that it's private. And I was telling him, no, it isn't, you know.
And this is, again, just me poking my head in. You guys are done. When it comes to the courts, as far as you being prosecuted for anything, are we...
No, he lied to have me arrested and said I called him in April.
Is this because he ended up getting an order of some type to keep you from calling or contacting him?
Yeah, when I was in jail, I was served with a protection order, and I followed it. But what do you do when a police officer says that you called him? You just have to go prove that you weren't, you know. So
you still got that one.
Yeah, and that's my complaint that I haven't formalized with Pruz yet because I didn't want to meet with him again.
Well,
because he's lying, you know, he's telling me that he can't read the transcripts, and everything was about my case and hardly anything about Wells, and I don't understand how he could investigate lying in court without the transcripts.
I understand your frustration. I mean, this is not a cookie cutter case. I mean, this one is very different from the run-of-the-mill ones we have. Or I shouldn't say run-of-the-mill, from the typical ones we have.
Yeah.
And again,
and that's not my fault either. That's due to, you know, I have a letter that...
I'm not throwing stones at you. I'm not trying to make it that way. I'm just trying to, I guess, summarize the position that I'm in my chair. I'm looking at this, trying to figure out how we can, I mean, unfortunately, in the system we have, to say you make people happy isn't exactly accurate, but to make sure everybody's getting what they deserve out of the system, including Sergeant Wells and including yourself. I'm trying to think back to, again, you've told me some stuff today that I haven't researched back.
Yeah, and, you know, I have a letter from Internal Affairs saying that regarding the allegation that Officer Telly failed to investigate the incident properly, the investigation found evidence to support the allegation of events as you described. Therefore, the allegation is sustained. So there's my first one that they, you know, that's one that took over 2.5 years. And then the next...
I was actually here when that thing finally wrapped up. Obviously, I wasn't here when it started. But yeah, I guess I do have some knowledge of that one.
Yeah, it started off bad because Martinique answered the phone. And the first time I called Internal Affairs to file my complaint, she had threatened me with arrest for hacking computers, and she said I was lying and I could be arrested, and she had evidence right in front of her. And yeah, it's been nothing but pressure, pretty much from everybody but you and Marlena.
Well, she's been here longer than anybody, but, well, here's the thing. I mean, and this is just me keeping it real with you. I only have 6 investigators up here. There's only 6 sergeants that investigate all the complaints, so it's kind of a rotation, if you understand how that works.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, they rotate who gets what, and we stay busy. There's a lot of stuff going on up here, both citizen complaints as well as stuff that's generated from within the walls that the citizens ever know about, stuff that we see that we generate. That being said, I know, have you spoken to Lieutenant Reyes?
Yeah, and he was the same thing. He was just looking up my court case and talking about me being arrested, and
I know,
so it was.
And he did come talk to me probably within the last week. It was probably towards the end of last week, and I know he had said at that point in time, he informed me that I think in your past that you have filed complaints on 3 or 4. There's 3 or 4 internal affairs investigators.
Yeah, it would have been Sergeant Martinique was the first one.
Martinick? Yeah, Martinick.
Yeah,
I thought you said Martinick, Garcia,
Roland.
And then he had said that you informed him you were contemplating filing one on Cruz at that point in time.
No, I have called Marlena to file one on Cruz for lying to me.
I mean,
and then the other one was on Wells for lying to Cruz. Because when he was interviewed, he's.
I wouldn't say lying to Cruz, but lying during the investigation.
Yeah, lying during his interview, and then I wanted my letter from the first investigation talking about lying during his interview, because that was part of my complaint, was that he lied to Sergeant Thomas during the very first investigation. But I know I have a lot of complaints, but I have.
Well, let me finish my thought there, just so
Okay.
I don't leave you thinking I was thinking one thing when I was thinking the other. I just wanted to make it clear that I'm actually running out of investigators that you haven't had, in your terms, a bad experience with. So we're getting down.
Yeah, they all know Wells or his family, or served on the union board with Telly, or and that's the thing, sir, is when the citizen is calling, I don't need to be. I have a letter saying they didn't investigate. Why was I threatened? Why was I called a liar? And then when I get into Sergeant Garcia and everything, it's more of the same. The losing it on the shelf, all these other things. And then
I can't answer for
well,
that.
it says here in regards to the allegation that Lieutenant Roland and Sergeant Garcia neglected their duty because the case is still not finished, the investigation found evidence to support the allegation.
When did you get that letter?
That was in November of 2013.
See, that's one of those that I wasn't even around for, so I don't even.
Yeah, and see, I got the letter investigating them before I got my first one. I didn't get my first one till, so it's just.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me just hit the fast forward button and ask the $1 million question. What can I do within the confines of that contract I'm trying to think of the right word, to give you some form of, and this is the wrong term, but it's first on the top, satisfaction, some form of, I've got my just due, or this has been, well, I mean...
It's not really, what it is that if somebody not as capable as me called internal affairs, they wouldn't stand a chance. They wouldn't, I wasn't broke, I'm not dumb, I worked for Don Stenberg, and I'm not the smartest guy in the room usually, but I'm usually not the dumbest, and this is about people that things are happening to, and they wouldn't stand a chance against you guys. Not you, but I had to get arrested to get my complaint done. What's a poor person going to do? I have the money to get out of jail. I went and defended myself. And
the system's in place that any citizen, obviously, and you know this, any citizen's unhappy with the Omaha Police Department and feel that they've been mistreated or policies violated, the system's in place to file a citizen's complaint. However, it's also in place that we have to definitively prove those allegations. And I'll tell you this, and I'm not going to get specific on any specific cases, but there's often times where, and I'll err it on the side of, say you, there's times where a case from a citizen comes up here and we look at it objectively and we're like, man, that could have happened. But until we can prove it in like court, I mean, it's...
And that's why the court transcripts were important in the tapes, because they were, I had the investigation said there was conflicting evidence between all parties. Well, you had a judge, a cop, and a prosecutor. And the tapes and the transcripts go around all that. You always go for stuff that's in concrete when you're questioning people, and just asking John Wells if he did it. I was arrested at work twice, and all I did was tell my story, sir. I never threatened anybody. I have the police outside of my house every day. I'm scared to death of you guys. I don't want to even talk to you, but I feel it's so important, to do it. And, and I don't know, when I'm reading the contract and I'm trying to navigate this process, like the bypassing the 100 days for an extension. Yeah, because see, I was trying to navigate that, and that's one of the reasons I was arrested, because I'm trying to call the city and the union to find out about the extension of time, and also who in the hell do I appeal to?
Well, I can tell you who you appeal to now, and that's the Citizens Review Board does not work for the police department. They work underneath the mayor. So
yeah, well, hopefully we'll be able to get the contract, because Citizens Review Board or not, the contract, the 100 days, it took me just a couple days over the 100 days to get the transcripts. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, like the first time I filed it after my trial, but I called before my trial and I told them everything but a few things. But when I'm calling, the guy I'm talking to serves on the union board with Pat Telley, and Pat Telley's on the union board. I mean, who do I, it's like, if you were facing 10 years in prison, would you give the cops your story before they're going to go to court to lie? And so...
And I've never been on that side of the equation.
Oh boy, let me tell you, it's scary when they put you in the car and they know the people who attacked you, and they put you in the car and take you off and not mention people that are there that'll save your life. So I had to go door to door, and I found witnesses, and that's the only reason. And that's why it's important to me, because a poor person wouldn't have had $5,000 to get out of jail to go door to door. And that letter that they didn't investigate was very important to me, because it validated what had happened to me. And that's the thing I want with the Wells investigation, is that the guy lied to have me arrested at work twice. When he filed the police report, I hadn't even talked to him, and I had only called the union twice. And he called, and they made a report on it for 2 calls to the union, no threats, no anything. And then he lied to get the protection order. The same judge who had his conviction of me overturned, told me to shut up and I had no rights. And he didn't even allow me to speak or to ask a question. So I could have proved he lied to get the protection order. And I just want people to do their jobs. I want the process to be fair.
Well, I will tell you this though, and this is the one constructive criticism I'll give you for the future, not for anything in the past, because again, I've already told you I haven't been around for a lot of the issues in the past. But moving forward, I can assure you, from my perspective, from my chair, you'll get nothing but the truth from me. That being said, sometimes, and it happens in my everyday life, sometimes the truth isn't what we always want to hear. That doesn't mean it's not the truth, though. So make sure, regardless of what you're told in the future and any future dealings with us, that you're able to objectively, even if what you hear is truthful but you don't want to hear, don't mistake it for not being truthful. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you gotta be able to. Because I get bad news all the time that it's like, man, I'd rather have heard something else. That doesn't mean it's not true. It just means it doesn't fall where I wanted it to sometimes.
Yeah, these are more like things that are obvious, and since I tape them, I can go back and look at what I was told, and like the transcripts. He wanted nothing to do with the transcripts or any evidence the whole time. I had to argue with him about why it was relevant to even have the transcripts. And then everything was, him and Reyes, everything was about my first trial, which sir, if you win an appeal and the prosecutor refuses to refile the charges, that's a win. And then they just keep talking about it. And it's if I have a complaint, what I did is nothing to do with what they did. I won my case, and I defended myself. I looked eye to eye with Wells, and the appeals court got to read what he said and what I said, and that's what they found, But yeah, everything was what I'm doing is wrong. And they're just trying to help me stop from getting arrested, they say. And then I tell them, I don't need your help. And they just keep on trying to help me not be arrested. If somebody is calling you guys about, let's say an officer did something to them. Let's say they broke the law. Let's say they shoplifted. And when the cop got them in the car, he punched them in the face 5 times. When it's investigated, do they just talk about the shoplifting and not what the officer does, or refuse the videotape of it, that kind of stuff?
Not that I've seen. We certainly shouldn't do that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting. He told me the judge convicted me for a reason, and then after he refused the transcripts all that time, he told me I wasn't man enough to keep my word to give them to him. And then I find out his family and Wells' family are close. And so when I'm calling, I'm not getting, let's see what we can do about Wells, let's get the transcript. Let's investigate it. I get, what did you do? Read me your protection order. Why are you calling him? Why did the judge convict you? And I don't think that's supposed to be that way.
Well, without getting too much in the weeds, sitting in Cruz's, we're talking about Cruz here, sitting in his office with all the facts he had in front of him. I'm certainly not going to throw him under the bus and say what he did was wrong or inappropriate. Not being there at the time, I totally get where you're coming from your perspective, because in that box, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, especially when you're innocent, and that's why I won my appeal. And I didn't break. I read the laws, and I read all the court cases I could find, and then I followed the law to a T. And when they arrested me, they made it up. And Wells made it. He made the call scene. It's like a reverse stalker. He's like throws himself at my feet, and then claims I'm stalking him. And I never was calling him. My calls were to the union in general. And to get the protection order, he had to lie, see? And that's what everything was about. Well, when he went and lied in court to the prosecutor and then lied to Internal Affairs, Cruz didn't look into that at all. My letter doesn't even state the one. But just asking me, did Wells lie? And I go, yeah. And then asking Wells, did he lie? And he goes, no. Without the transcripts, it's laughable. And then exonerating him of it is a slap in my face that you guys exonerated him of it, without looking at and the whole time he's exonerating him, I'm on the phone with him, and he doesn't tell me the investigation's closed, So I'm talking to him, I think the investigation's open still, and it's not, it's closed.
Well, and
so that's why I wanted someone else for the other one, and...
Well, let me hit the fast forward again. Where are we at right now with you, with as far as...
we have the second investigation against Wells that I filed I called about on the 24th of March.
Okay.
And that's the one I was supposed to meet Cruz about, but I refused because he's lying to me. He tells me he can't read the court transcripts. And then when I say I have them, I'm going to give them to you, he tells me we're not going to pay for them. And then when I tell him he doesn't have to pay for them, he says you don't investigate it. everything that he could do to not.
You still have that case open with him right now?
Well, I haven't formalized it yet because I refused to meet with him. They gave me him again for, he had the first one which he closed, and then they gave him to me for the second one. So I have that one, and then I have one against Reyes, and then I have another one against Wells.
What did Reyes do?
He was lying to me. He'd like tell me he'd hear my messages and not hear my messages. And then he told me that you guys don't investigate lying in court. A citizen complaint, and it's investigated as part of the citizen's complaint, even if it's not.
We take citizens' complaints, clearly. I'm just saying when it comes to crimes.
Yeah,
lying in court is perjury. Lying in court is a crime.
Okay, then how did they exonerate him of it if they don't investigate it?
And that's what I can do some research for you. So the next time I talk, I can be a little bit more prepared on how perjury is actually investigated. Because again, I think I fall short there in knowing exactly.
Yeah, because it wasn't just perjury; it was lying to the prosecutor.
Well, under oath. I mean, under oath is.
No, this was before he even was at trial. This is when he's just talking to her before my trial. He tells her that I'm continuing to harass him, and when she repeated it, I got him to admit it wasn't calls. And then when he found out it wasn't calls, you know, when you guys sent me my letter with the investigation completed, the one that he was told the court that was the harassment, it had the wrong date on it. It had the date of my arrest, which was July 11th, 2013. And I hadn't filed my complaint till like September 16th. Well, my hearing was on like September 9th. So when he goes and he tells the prosecutor that I'm continuing to harass him, he said it two ways: calls or my complaint. And the complaint was for lying to the prosecutor. You understand, why would I file a complaint for something that she hadn't even repeated to the judge yet?
Did you get was that an incident where you got an amended letter with the proper date on it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All I want, like you said, is for just the chips to fall where they may, people to do their job, and when the citizen is trying to file a complaint against an officer for doing things against him, Internal Affairs does not need to sit there and jump all over the citizen. That's all our calls were, sir. Our calls were hardly ever about John Wells. They were all about me. Every one of them just about. So it was, and that's stressful. And that's why, you know, I didn't walk in there with a lawyer with a bunch of lawyer tricks. I went in there and cleaned John Wells' clock, and he was red, and he was sweating. You should have seen him. He looked like he was going to blow up, that I caught him lying. And if I can do that, Cruz can. You know, and so if he would have questioned him with the transcripts, it would have been probably a little bit better, but that's just my complaints, were that he lied to Internal Affairs. That's the one I still haven't got yet, and then the one against Reyes. And
now that one that he lied to Internal Affairs, that's the one that you haven't formalized, right?
No, that was my first one, was that he lied to Internal Affairs.
Which one is the one you haven't formalized?
That's the one I called on January 24th, or March 24th. 3 days after I was arrested. See, I formalized my complaint with John Wells' family friend on the 14th of March. A week later, I was arrested. When I filed the complaint, I told him I had tapes of the prosecutor. He never wanted to listen to him, but I was arrested a week later, and then I don't know, in the middle of one conversation, just out of nowhere, I didn't ask him or anything, he goes, well, I never told John Wells anything about you. Okay, and I go, okay, you know, so that's kind of how it happened. I formalized my complaint against Wells on March 14th, and a week later I was arrested on the 21st, and then I filed another complaint on the 24th.
Well, at the end of the day, taking all emotions out of it and taking all personalities out of it, from my position as a captain of this unit, I want to eliminate future complaints from Sean Stewart.
Well, I appreciate it.
And don't take that I mean that in the most.
Well, I'm not taking it as a threat.
Okay.